In terms of reframing problems to resolve them for the reflective practitioner, we can also use what's called the professions approach. The professions approach is simply a way to look at a particular issue or a problem that you're faced with as a teacher by focusing on the different viewpoints, the different perspectives of other stakeholders who are impacted on by that particular problem. I mean, for example, the way a doctor perceives a problem would be different to the way a patient perceives a problem. The way you, as a teacher, perceive a problem would be different to the way a student in your class would perceive that same problem. And the professions approach is focused then on helping us take a particular and useful point of view on a difficulty that we're being confronted by. And it really is a way of helping you stand back from the problem and look at it much more objectively. Because the problem with being a teacher is that problems can very often be viewed very subjectively by us. And the first thing to do is, in order to resolve a problem, is to perhaps brainstorm the factors. And we've looked at the 4 Ps approach in terms of resolving the issue. We take different perspectives on the issue: the product perspective, the planning perspective, and also the potential perspective and the people perspective. By looking at these different views, we can stand back and start to analyze and understand the issues that we're facing. And we can fill out the 4 Ps matrix in this regard in order to explore the problem from this professions approach, from this more objective perspective rather than a subjective perspective. And in this example, we can see how a teacher might use the 4 Ps approach and the professions perspective in order to reframe their perspective of an issue in order to resolve it. For example, the issue that you might face, or any teacher might face, is that the students are not interested in the content of a lesson. And so by looking at it from the product perspective, we can actually start to deconstruct issues which students might be faced with in terms of the particular subject. For example, it might be that aspects of the subject are quite complex and difficult to understand. By looking at it from a planning perspective, we can then start to think about how we're actually working with students in terms of the subject content. For example, are we planning our lessons in very rigid and strict, fixed ways, rather than being much more diverse and flexible about it? By looking at the problem from a people perspective, we can actually start to understand the problem from other people's point of view, from our students' point of view. And for example, it might be that the students don't actually see the need for certain aspects of a subject in terms of their future goals or indeed their future life. And of course, we can look at a particular problem from a potential perspective. It could be, for example, that the students, especially nowadays, may be very much inclined to the use of technology in terms of learning. And this can actually help us as teachers to find new ways of working with students and therefore helping them become more interested in terms of that learning. So we can see the 4 Ps approach, this professions approach, helps the teacher start to frame their learning from experiences and use a very structured methodology to help them understand difficulties and start to resolve them. 4 Ps is very simple to use, but very effective.